In this video we are going to check out Remix. I've been playing around with Remix for the last couple of days and even made the e-commerce site that we'll be making in the Next.js and I series in Remix. This video is mostly going to be about that journey and how Remix compares to Next.js. Remix is a React framework similar to Next.js, and I would say that it's the only real competitor to Next. It is focused on web standards and modern web app UX. Although Remix is pretty new to open source, it has been around for about 2 years now, but as a paid software that was recently open sourced. The main selling point of Remix is that it embraces web standards and tries to leverage them to provide great user and developer experience. Remix is trying to bring old school web development practices and patterns to the modern JS world, so if you're an old school developer like me, these things are going to be pretty familiar to you. Remix philosophy consists of few parts: embracing server-client model, which means that if you are doing things the Remix way, most of your data is going to be coming from the server. There is no static site generation or incremental static generation in Remix, only server-side rendering, for which Remix provides very nice APIs to make your life as a developer easier. If you want to make your site faster, this may sound a bit counterintuitive, but since you can transform your data on the server, this means that you are sending only the data that the user needs on every request, so your payloads can be pretty small. If you are using modern web infrastructure combined with the native web features like prefetch, this can make your site very fast even without serving mostly static content. Remix is very easy to deploy and plays nicely with Vercel, Cloudflare Pages, Cloudflare Workers, Fly.io, and many others, so you can easily serve your Remix site from the servers that are closest to your users using CDNs. Another core philosophy is that it embraces native web standards like HTML, HTTP, Web Fetch API, Request Response, URL Search Params, and others that already live in your browser. Progressive enhancement is another big thing for Remix, and because of it, data layer of Remix can function with or without JS. It uses JS to provide nicer user experience, but you can add or remove data from your data source without using JS at all, because Remix knows how to work with the lowly form tag that has been around for 20 plus years, and it can send the data to server without JS. Of course, as you will see in this video, Remix augmented the form tag for the 21st century, but it can also function like it's 1999. So now that you have general idea what Remix is, let's get our feet wet and let me show you how I remade the site from Next.js and I series in Remix. Recreating the app that we made in Next.js Next series was a breeze. I managed to get most of the functionality that we have in the app in just 4 to 5 hours. Keep in mind that I already had a lot of code that I could reuse from that app, and I skipped the minicart and sign-in functionality because I didn't want to learn another library for authentication, since we used Next.auth in Next.js Next series and it can only be used with Next.js. However, there is a library called Remix.auth that you can use for that, and it seems pretty similar to Next.auth, so if you need authentication in your app, you can check that out. The only thing I installed when remaking this app was Tailwind, so that I can have the same design that we had on Next.js and Next app. To install Tailwind, you can just follow a quick guide on Tailwind's website and you'll be good to go in no time. When you open the app in your editor, you will see a folder structure that is similar to Next.js, except all the important stuff is in the app folder. And in app folder, you only have routes directory, which is very similar to the pages directory in Next.js, because just like Next, Remix uses page-based routing, so whatever you add in there will automatically get its own route. This is the folder structure that I ended up with when the app was finished. Styles directory is generated by Tailwind, and all the other folders are pretty much just copy and paste from the Next.js site, except I needed to save them into app folder as opposed to the root folder of Next.js app. If you want to see all the code, there will be a link in the description to the GitHub repo that you can browse through. First thing I wanted to do was set up the homepage, and on the homepage we have few interesting functionalities. One is getting all of our products from directors, getting all the categories for the filter, and also filtering functionality itself. Homepage is of course index.js file in the routes folder. My next step uses React query to get the data and filter it. However, this is not the Remix way, because remember, Remix respects the server client philosophy, so it would be nice to embrace that and get the data from the server instead from the client. So I removed the React query part of the code and leaned into the server. And this is not anything new, because Next.js does the similar thing with get server-side props, just here it works a bit differently. First you create a models directory, and in it I created a file called index.server.js. Here I added all of the getter functions for my data. And if you have been following my Directors Next series, you can see that here I'm pretty much using the same functions for getting the data, and also the same GraphQL queries that I have been using on the Directors Next site. You can return whatever you need from these functions. I'm exporting functions for getting all of my products categories and a function for getting my filter products that accepts an array of category IDs to filter those products. Now back in index.jsx file, you need to export a loader function that will talk to the server and get your actual data. For categories, it's easy. You can just use loader data remix hook and get it from there. Products are a bit more complicated because we need to filter them. So for that, I'm using the use fetcher remix hook, which will allow me to first of all display all the products, but when user selects a category, it will send the category IDs to the loader function, which will run a different getter function to get my filter data. Our fetcher is called products in this case, and the fetcher has a submit method on it. So whenever the state of the selected categories change, it will submit it to the loader. And loader will receive a get request, which we can parse and then call the getFilterProducts function with an array of IDs as a parameter to get the filtered products. This workflow is very similar to Directors Next step, except here all the data fetching is happening on the server and without the need for React query. And if we check out our front page, everything is working as expected. There is also a difference how Remix handles meta tags compared to Next.js. In Next, you would import head component, add it to the beginning of the layout on your page, and then add the actual tags there, like title, description, and whatever else you need. In Remix, you would export meta function for every page, and that would overwrite all the default tags that you can define in root.jsx. Root.jsx is similar to app.jsx in Next. Also, you can add dynamic data to it by passing in the data variable, which will then have access to all the data that you get from the loader function on that page. I'm doing that on the single product page to set the title of the page to be the name of the product. Now, to link the product to the product page, you first need to define that page. You can do that almost identically to Next.js, except you would use $sign notation for defining dynamic parts of your route instead of square brackets. In Next.js, you would get the page by slug by writing square bracket slug square bracket.jsx, but in Remix, that page would be called $slug.jsx. Now, my case is a bit more complicated because I don't just want to display the name of product in the URL, but I also want to display a category. So I would have /products/product category/product name. In Next and in Remix, you could create a folder called products, and in it you would create another folder called $category or square brackets category, and in it you would add a file called $slug.jsx or square brackets slug.jsx for Next.js. So this is almost the same in both frameworks. But in Remix, you could also just create a file with the name products.category.$slug.jsx, and you would get the same thing, which is cool. So I decided to go with that for my single product page. Also, I suggest that you read up on nested routes in Remix, which is really cool. You can do that on this address. To link my products to the single product page, I use the link component, which is also similar to the link component in Next, except in Remix you don't have href property, but instead you use to property. And also you don't need to wrap a link component around anchor tag like you need to do in Next.js. You can see the link to my products in the product card.jsx, and you can see the difference between Next and Remix. It's very similar for the most part. The only difference is the href property and the missing anchor tag. In Next.js, I added the header component, which holds the logo of the shop and navigation in app.jsx file. As I mentioned before, Remix has a file called root.jsx that serves the same purpose, so we can add header component that is visible throughout the site there. And there is just one more thing that I want to show you, and that is the form component, which I already talked a bit about at the beginning and said how it embraces web standards and old school way of dealing with forms. On sign up page you can register and create a new user in Directest. To do that, in Next we used use mutation hook from React Query, and we would get the data from the form by creating handle submit function, for which we would prevent default functionality of the form and then send the data to the server from there. This is the usual React pattern. But since Remix embraces the form, we can do things a bit differently. So first of all, I changed form to be form with capital F. Fun fact here is that you could leave it as just form with lowercase f and it would also work. It would just reload the page on sending the data, because that is what forms do. And this is the reason we need to use prevent default in the next version of this app. In Remix, I just added the method of post to the form, and I wanted it to do an action that is defined on the page it is on. But you could also add an action that will get instructions from another page. Then you need to define the action by exporting action function, to which you pass a request object. And then you can easily access the data from the form by using form data get function. When the data is defined, I just send it to the server with create user function, which I defined in the user.server.js file in models folder. Function for sending the data is the same as in Next.js version of the site. Now I'm waiting for the response from the server, and if I get create users item to be equal to null, I can return an error. Since I'm using Directest, this means that the user already exists. If the user does not exist, then I can just redirect the user to the thank you page after it's created on Directest API. Now if we get an error, we can get that information by using use action data remix hook, and then we can display an error on our layout like this. Of course, there is a lot more things to cover about Remix, but I can do that in one video. This video is just for you to get a taste of what is possible in Remix and how it works. My time with the framework was for the most part very enjoyable. I think it's an all-around great framework that is just going to get better with time and is a real competitor to Next.js. And competition is going to be great for us developers. If you want to take a look at the code I used in this video, you can check it out on GitHub, the link will be in the description below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.